Welcome to Distress to Joyful, Bailey's Way. I'm your host, Bailey Raber, here to enlighten you and the rest of the world about one of the most misunderstood mental health disorders out there, bipolar disorder. In each episode, we'll learn more about my personal journey with bipolar 2 disorder, how I've struggled with it, and how I've learned to overcome those struggles. Together, we'll laugh, we'll cry, and most importantly, we'll have fun. You'll leave each episode feeling hopeful and stocked full of useful information on how you can better yourself and the world around you. Hello, friends. Wowza, a lot has been going on lately. OMG. A lot of the big things have been design work. I have gotten a lot of inquiries lately about custom design work, which has been super exciting and just so fun for me. Y'all know I love a challenge, so I really do love when people come to me and say, hey, I really want something like this. Can you make this for me? And I'm just like, fuck yes, let me see what I can do. So that's been really fun. But I've also been getting some new items in the Etsy shop, Bailey's Way Designs. And speaking of the Etsy shop, I have a coupon for you because who doesn't love a coupon? You know I do. I love coupons. So you can access the coupon and get 15% off your first purchase by heading into the show notes. And there's a link in the show notes. Or actually, there's a link down in the episode description on whatever listening platform you happen to be tuning in on. So get over there and get your freaking coupon and go check out the shop. What more can I say? Oh, and thankfully, spring semester of college is about to come to an end. I have 2 weeks left, and I'm actually really excited for it to end. So I have been enjoying class. Don't get me wrong, you guys. I love my professors. They're both freaking awesome. Shout out to Miss Lark and Professor Saucedo. Y'all are fantastic. Love having classes with you guys. But it's just been a lot for me to be taking 2 college classes, working full-time during the week, having my podcast, doing design work, doing my Etsy shop, and exercising and trying to have a goddamn social life. Oh, and my Hindi classes. My God. It's a lot. It can be a lot. And I actually posted a little bit about this on Instagram recently just because I have just been feeling a bit overwhelmed by all the things. But the good news is I have been able to get caught up on a lot of these things that have just been overwhelming to me. So that's a huge plus. And summer break is right around the freaking corner, and I decided I'm going to give myself a goddamn well-deserved break. So I'm not taking classes this summer, and I'm going to focus my energy on you guys here for the podcast, obviously. And also, I'm going to get more back into, that was great English. I'm going to get back into some more writing for you guys on the blog. So I recently just published, it's part 2 of day 1 of my India trip. So you guys can also find that link in today's show notes. I'm really thrilled though, because the second part of day 1 is actually us just going through Mumbai and checking out Mumbai, which is one of the largest cities in India. And it's the beginning of the wonderful, fantastic trip that I went on. So I'm thrilled to be sharing all of this with you guys. It's all coming out of my travel diary, so straight from the heart, which is my favorite way to dish things out to you guys, straight from the heart. So I hope you guys check it out and enjoy. There are so many more photos in these blog posts than I have on social media. I have way too many to try to get them all on Instagram. So be sure to go check out the blog post and learn more about India through my travels. Super fun. So let's go ahead and get into today's episode. Me, my partner, and my bipolar disorder. How we live in harmony together. So if you tuned into episode 6 of season 3, which was the most recent episode before today, you heard all about how my wonderful partner, Monish, how he handled learning about my bipolar disorder, how I decided to tell him and when I decided to tell him, and, just the beginning stages of our relationship that revolved around my bipolar disorder, because that's a huge, important thing. You might also remember that I briefly discussed a few of the things that he chooses to do on his own to help me, things that I ask of him to help me, and then also the things that I do for him. So today, we're actually going to dive deeper into what I ask of him and what I do for him, along with what we do together as a team, which is really the most fucking important part of all this, you guys, is a team. A relationship, you should always be considering each other a team. Y'all are teammates. So I'm hoping that, especially discussing those aspects of our relationship, that y'all can fully understand all that we do to keep our relationship not only in harmony, but also thriving. Because we're thriving. I'm going to humble brag. We are. People tell us all the time that they can see how happy we are with each other. And it doesn't just come easy all the time for that, y'all. Like, relationships take work. All relationships take work. So, yeah, let's go ahead and dive in and get into what we do so that you guys can learn some cool things that maybe y'all can implement in your own relationships or think about implementing. Okay, so I found a really awesome quote real fast on Pinterest, and unfortunately, they didn't name who said it, so apologies. I can't give credit to who stated this quote. But the quote says, "You can't just give up on someone because the situation's not ideal. Great relationships aren't great because they have no problems. They're great because both people care enough about the other person to find a way to make it work." Boom! That right there is why Monish and I are thriving. That's why I humble bragged and said we're thriving, but that is why. It's because we care about each other so much that we are always willing to find a way to work through all of the tough situations that we sometimes find ourselves in, and we find a way to make it work. Always. And it takes work to find ways to make things work. So keep that in mind, y'all, but it's important and it matters. Okay, so let's begin diving deep into what we do for each other around my bipolar disorder. So first of all, I ask him to get curious and to ask questions. I talked about this one a bit last episode, but I ask Monish to ask me questions when he doesn't understand something, so that way I can try to explain it in a different way that makes more sense for him. And when doing that, I asked him recently, I'm like, let's take this a step further, because sometimes he says what, or he doesn't understand, but he doesn't tell me that he doesn't understand. So when he doesn't tell me that he doesn't understand, I just repeat myself, and then it's frustration or he gives up, and that's just no good. No fun, y'all. So I ask him to tell me when he doesn't understand, so that way I'm like, oh, and my brain can figure out a different way to repeat the same information, but to rephrase it, not repeat it, but rephrase it in a different way that might make more sense for his brain. We have two different brains that work differently, so we have to figure these things out. So I ask him to ask me to give him time when he needs it. Yes, that's a little redundant. I ask him to ask me. But with this, guys, sometimes we get into an argument or a fight or a little tiff of some sort, and Monish will need time to recover before we can reconvene and talk about what happened. And so I've asked him to tell me when he needs time away so that I can respectfully give it to him versus him just walking away and ignoring me for a little while to get the space he needs. Because, guys, let's face it, we all need time to process, and some of us just need more time than others. And that's okay. Monish takes more time to process fights than I do. I grew up in fucking dysfunctional chaos, so I was used to turn around real quick, having to get over it, move on, continue. And he's not used to that. He needs his time. He needs to think things through and process internally. And that's okay. But what's not okay for me is for him to just ignore me and walk away, because being ignored is a huge trigger for me, y'all. A huge trigger. And that stems from my parents, because my parents used to send me to my room when I was acting out or whatever as a kid, and I fucking hated that. I hated it so much because it was basically isolation, which is not a good thing when someone is going through something tough. And oh my gosh, sometimes my mom would even go into her own room and lock the door because she just didn't want to deal with me or my siblings, or if there was fighting or screaming or crying, whatever. She would do that, and that was hurtful. That was really, really hurtful as a kid, to be in distress for some reason and to be crying and to be wanting comfort. And the person who's supposed to be giving you that comfort literally shuts you out, either by shutting me in my room or by shutting the door on herself and locking me out. Like that was hurtful. And I do know now that my mom was dealing with her own shit, and she was doing the best that she could with the tools that she had. But her behaviors have now created a massive trigger inside me. So when Monish walks away from me in the middle of an argument or when I'm upset, I instantly start to shut down or panic or freak out or whatever, because it triggers me, because that's what my mom used to do, and that's abandonment. And I've actually explained this stuff to him, and that's how we came up with our solution, which is for him to tell me, hey, I need some time. Can I have some space? Or just to say, I'm going to take some time. We'll talk later. And just at that point, he can walk away, because when he does this, he's setting a boundary for himself to give himself the space that he needs, to say, hey, I need my own space. Give me some time. But also it sets me up to say, okay, let me give him time. We'll come back to this later as a couple. It'll be okay. So that has been so helpful for us, you guys. So helpful, especially when I'm having a nasty mood from my bipolar disorder. Oh, yes, this has been very, very helpful. So another thing that I ask him is, I ask Monish to adapt his previous ways of living and previous ways of just doing things in life, and to adopt some new techniques or phrases or new whatever it needs to be that would better help me. Oh, guys, this is a really, really big one. But y'all, let me just say this right now before we dive any deeper, that you should never, 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 never feel guilty about asking your partner not to say certain things or certain phrases that might trigger you, just as long as you have an alternative phrase ready to give to them, so that they can replace an old habit with a new one. So basically what I'm saying here is, you can't just be like, don't say that ever again, it triggers me, and then just walk away and leave it at that, because now you're leaving your partner confused. They're like, it triggers you. I can't say that again. Okay, so what am I allowed to say? And it just doesn't work like that. If they had nothing to replace it with, they're confused, they're hurt. Now there might be some pettiness boiling up. Well, okay, then I'm just never going to say anything like that ever again. And it can just cause more problems. Trust me, we've learned the hard way. Monish and I have both learned the hard way that I can't ask him not to say something that might be triggering without having an alternative way to say it. So let me go ahead and give a real life example from me and Moni, because a huge trigger for me is when I think people aren't listening to me. especially if I think that Moni isn't listening to me. A little backstory on this: I spent my entire childhood not being listened to, heard, or understood by my parents. So that is again where this trigger stems from. So when I'm explaining something to Moni that I need for him to do, like maybe something about the laundry or the dishes or an errand we need to run, whatever it might be, and he doesn't fully understand me, he will often just repeat back exactly what he thought I was trying to convey, which oftentimes is a totally different message from what I was actually trying to get across. And this causes me to immediately assume that he was not listening to me at all. And then I will usually react because it's a trigger point for me. And then he reacts to my reaction and a chain occurs. And now we're both pissed off. Yep, this was a cycle for a long ass time, you guys. And it is not fun. Let me just tell you. So to combat this and to prevent the angry chain from even occurring to begin with, I have asked him to say one little line before trying to make sure that he understands what I'm saying. So by that, I mean, like, he needs to say this line before repeating what he thought he heard from me. So I understand that he was listening. He's just trying to make sure that he and I are on the same page. And I have him say, I have asked him to say, okay, just to clarify, XYZ. He doesn't actually say XYZ after that. Just want to make that clear. Just want to clarify that. But just that little sentence. Okay, just to clarify. 4 little words. Adding that on makes a world of difference. Because when he says those 4 little words before he spews out what he thought he heard me say, I now know that he was listening, but he just probably wasn't able to process the info the same way that my brain does. Again, 2 different brains. So he needs to clarify that he fully understands. And then at that point, I can correct anything that he might have misunderstood, and we can go about our day just happy as a fucking clam. This makes a world of difference, you guys, and it has prevented probably hundreds of fights at this point. Probably hundreds, because I know he's listening. I know he's always listening, but, you know, trigger points, they're not easy. Okay, friends, so I am super excited to introduce y'all to this little magic productivity drink called Magic Mind. Okay, first of all, y'all should know by now that I am super productive. Okay, well, most of the time I'm super productive. And just when I thought I couldn't be any more productive, my friends at Magic Mind came around. They sent me some samples, and y'all, I am totally hooked on these little drinks. Totally hooked. So here's the deal. These little Magic Mind drinks are kind of like coffee, but totally better because it's without all the caffeine. And y'all, I'm super high energy already as it is, so I cannot have more than 1 cup of coffee per day, and I can't have it past 10 a.m. So adding these little Magic Minds alongside my coffee, it not only gives me lasting energy that coffee does not. We all know there's crashes after that. But Magic Mind also allows me to focus, and it helps me to stay calm. I tend to freak out, so I've noticed a huge increase in my calmness, and my stress levels have been lower since I've started drinking these every single day. And y'all, specifically, all of these benefits from these little magic drinks have been super, super helpful when I'm dealing with a hypomanic episode. Because during those, I think I am Superwoman. I run around trying to do all of the things. And normally during hypomania, I will just start 50 million new projects and never finish them because I'm just too busy starting and creating and going. But ever since I started drinking Magic Mind daily each morning, I have seen a huge increase in finishing my new projects. Now, don't get me wrong, I still start a million new projects, but I am able to slow down and focus and finish things instead of constantly jumping back and forth to other things. So, I'm not really sure how this works. I do know that it is natural, and I'm going to just read a couple ingredients for you real quick. So, like, there's matcha in it, there's aptogens, there's nootropics, I think I pronounced that right, and there's honey. So these aptogens, those are things like this ashwagandha root. And y'all, my partner, Monish, he is from India. And so when he read these ingredients and he saw that ashwagandha root was in there, he was super, super thrilled and excited that I'm now consuming ashwagandha somehow daily, along with every other goodness in this little bottle. But it is known for relieving stress. Like in India, ashwagandha is what they prescribe for helping to relieve stress. And so we're both really pleased to see how I've been benefiting from this. And you know what's really cool is that Magic Mind was so kind to give me a 20% off code to share with you so that you can give this little magic elixir drink a try. So head on over to magicmind.co/joy20. So that's magicmind.co/joy20 and enter code joy20. That's JOY20 at checkout. And the great thing is they have a money back guarantee. So if you, for some reason, don't find it as amazing as I do, you can get your money back. It's no big deal. But I really do think that you're going to love it just as much as me. So if you're looking for a way to increase your energy, relieve stress, and just get more shit done and stay calm, stay calm during all the crazy swings of life, then you've definitely got to give Magic Mind a try. So don't forget to go to magicmind.co/joy20 and use code joy20 at checkout so you can receive my 20% off discount. And you can also find the link for this in the show notes for the episode. But once again, that's magicmind.co and use code joy20. So let's go ahead and move on to things that I do for him. So a big one that I've been doing for probably about a year and a half or so now is I will verbally tell Moni how I'm feeling when certain moods start to shift in a negative direction. So Monish is still getting into the habit of asking me how I feel, which that is something that I have asked of him as well, is to ask me questions. Very first point I brought up, ask me questions and get curious. So I've asked him also to ask me about how I'm feeling. When he's not really sure and he can't tell where my mood is, ask. Never assume. Assuming makes an ass out of you and me. So please don't assume, Moni, and just ask. And that's hard for him because he's not in the habit of doing that. And so since he's not in a habit of that just yet, what I can do for him is I can go ahead and just randomly blurt out how I'm feeling when these feelings aren't good. And I mean, I could probably tell him how I'm feeling when my feelings are good, but really it's a lot more helpful for him to know when my moods and my feelings are not good so that he can maneuver around me without setting off any hidden atomic bombs. Oh, like Minesweep. Do you guys remember Minesweep? That stupid computer game? Like how you just had to, there's all those little check boxes and you're just pushing them and you're hoping not to set off the atomic bomb. So imagine Minesweep on the screen, and the Minesweep is my emotions and my feelings. And here's Monish. He is the little mouse. And you see Monish, and he's just clicking on these little squares, hoping not to set off one of those bombs and make an explosion happen. Because if he does, that's a huge problem. Seriously, though, if he doesn't know what my mood is like, that could easily occur, and it has plenty of times in the past. So, what I'm about to say kind of also leads into the next point in what I do for him. But there was one occasion when I was just feeling super, super salty from a previous fight that we had. But I was putting on a smile in an effort to try to force myself to get over it and to just switch into a better mood. And I hadn't been able to get in a better mood yet, so that's sometimes what I do is I just force myself because then eventually it'll go into play. That's just a little tactic I do every now and then when necessary. But since I hadn't been able to get myself into a better mood, like genuinely, and I was just kind of faking it till I made it, Monish said something that he always says to me in a playful way. It's always meant to be playful. But because I was still in a shit mood at that moment, I was being really sensitive, and I took this little playful phrase and this playful thing he always says to me, I took it the wrong way, and I just reacted so negatively towards him. Literally, he hit the mind sweep and explosion. So his response was, well, I guess I'll just never say that to you again. Little pettiness coming out there. And oh man, so that, irritated me in the moment too. So that set me off. And then we had to separate and we had to cool off. And once my head became clear and I had calmed down and I'd gotten into a better mood, I explained this to him. So I literally sat him down and I was like, Moni, you don't need to change your words and change what you say to me. I know that you were just being playful. I truly know that. But in that moment, I was still in a shitty mood, so I was feeling sensitive, and I took it the wrong way, which I normally don't do. So instead of changing what you say, I just ask that you pay attention to my mood so that you can better navigate if now is the time to be playful and pick at me, or if you should just save it for later. So if I verbally tell you something like I'm upset, or I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling frustrated right now, take that as a sign just to be gentle with me. And if we had an argument earlier, you sure as hell better check in with me on how I'm feeling after we've settled everything out, just to be sure that I fully moved on before immediately trying to be playful with me. So when I was able to explain it like this, just calm and clear, and explain, you don't have to stop being playful. You just have to pick the right times. He told me that it made so much sense and that he's really going to work on being more mindful of my moods and asking me so that these things will help our relationship in the long run. And that's why I have said that I will verbally tell him when my moods aren't good, because it's going to take him a while to get used to asking, so I'm going to help by just blurting it out. So another thing that I do with him is I coach Moni to better understand why I react the way that I do. So that way he understands why, when he does a specific behavior or says something a certain way, why it sets me off. So let's dive a little bit deeper into that. So once again, just a reminder, I grew up in a dysfunctional household. So dysfunctional. But thankfully, Moni did not. He did not. And I'm so, so grateful for that. But because we were raised so very differently, he often does not understand why I behave certain ways, especially when I'm angry or when I'm upset, because he was taught how to better manage his emotions all throughout his childhood. While in my home, it was chaos city, and you just fucking did whatever you could, and you just rolled with it, and just put on a smile and make everybody think you're happy. That was more of it, actually. So when I get really super angry, I will sometimes yell, and I've been known to throw or break things, something that I am not proud of, by the way. Just want to make that clear. But it will literally freak Monish out because no one in his household growing up ever behaved like that. They didn't scream, they didn't slam doors, they didn't break shit. So when we were on a walk a couple weeks ago, I was in a clear thinking space and I was able to describe to Moni where all of those behaviors of mine stem from. And they stem from my parents. Blah, of course. Who else at this point? But growing up, they would yell. They would scream. They would throw things. They would break things. They would say fucked up things to us and to each other. You name it. That's what happened in our house. And all of these were behind closed doors, so nobody really knew what was going on. It was happening in private, which is definitely makes everything fucking worse. But y'all, that was such a terrible example for my parents to try to set because as kids, you watch the behaviors of your parents and then you mimic them. So I saw mom and dad yelling and breaking shit when they were mad, which made me think it's okay for me to yell and break shit and slam doors when I'm mad. Oh my God. And speaking of this, it just reminds me that one of my mom's favorite phrases to say growing up to us kids was do as I say, not as I do. Which doesn't work, y'all. It doesn't work. So when I explained the behaviors and how I learned them from my parents, when I was able to explain all of this to Monish, it made so much sense to him why I react intensely, but also have shitty behaviors attached to my intense reactions. And after I explained this to him, I coached him by saying, so when I'm yelling or if I'm getting angry and I feel like I need to break something or I slam a door or whatever it is, what I need for you to do is I need you to not react at all. Because if you can stay calm during my shitstorm, I'm going to be able to calm down myself. But if you begin to react to my reacting, that's going to cause a hurricane to form and the shit is really going to hit the fan then. But explaining this to him, fully being able to explain where both of us have a clear mind and say, hey, if you can try your hardest to do this for me, it will make both of our lives easier. It made so much sense. And again, I understand it's going to take him time to make this a habit and to learn, especially to learn not to react when I'm reacting and to just stay calm during my storm. So I give him so much grace during this learning process. But the fact that we're able to talk about this, communicate, and remind each other of these things, that's the most important step you have to start with. Because you got to start somewhere. And speaking of grace, we're going to talk more about that here in just a moment. So don't let that word slip your mind. But let's go ahead and move into the things that we've come up with as a team in order to help each other when I'm having a really bad day or a bad episode. And then the first thing that we do is we take time to talk about what happened. That's not the first thing that we do. That's just key. It's just so important, guys, that you do that. And when we talk about when things happened, we both get a turn to talk with no interruptions from the other person so that we can fully explain our side of the story while the other person listens to understand. And again, that's another key. We have to listen to understand each other in order to be able to resolve and come up with a solution and to move forward. Another thing that we do together is we find solutions to prevent the same issue from occurring. So that tags on a bit back to we take time to talk about what happened. Because we're not just talking about it, we're also finding solutions. So as a team, we are always coming up with ways to prevent the same argument or same fight from reoccurring by finding a new way to handle it before it can happen again. And some of our solutions for problems are we talk openly about our triggers with each other in order for us to learn what behaviors of ours will trigger the other person. That one's key because Monish has his own triggers too. So I have to learn what I need to change in my behavior not to set off his triggers, and vice versa. So going back to finding new phrases. So we both find new phrases for each other so that we can replace triggering phrases and be able to move forward and not repeat those same things. Just replacements. That's it. Take out one sentence that sounds shitty, replace it with another one. That's not going to set off that mind sweep atomic bomb. And something else that we did that we kind of came up with as a team, both of us came up with this idea, is that we posted a bunch of signs all around our house, the house we live in together. It's not a house, it's an apartment. Who am I kidding? Anyways, we post a bunch of signs all around our home that say, "That's not Bailey, that's bipolar disorder." And these are there to remind Monish that my nasty moods are not always controllable by me, which, if you haven't already, dude, you've got to go listen to season 2, episode 14. That's titled, "That's Not Me, That's Bipolar Disorder," where I explain these posters around our house in full detail. So, unfortunately, I'm not going to talk any more about it right now because you have a whole goddamn episode to explain it to you. Another thing that we do as a team is we learn from our past mistakes. So, we take time to evaluate what happened or what actually caused the previous fights so that we understand the root cause, and then we can find solutions to keep it from reoccurring. See, guys, all of these, they just kind of build on each other. They really just kind of build. It's like one after the other. But with this one, guys, we only do this when we both have a clear head. So either a few hours after the most recent fight or a few days sometimes. But we both need to have calmed down from it completely so that we can evaluate it from a clear perspective. Because once we figure out what causes these arguments, we can stop them because we don't like fighting. We love each other so much and we hate when we get in fights with each other. So we just want to prevent it from reoccurring as much as possible. And lastly, we give each other grace. Y'all, this is a big one, but it's also something that, in my opinion, both people need to not only give to each other, but they need to fully grasp the concept of grace and understand it for both themselves and the other person. So what I mean by that is that I fully understand that because I'm asking Monish to learn new things and to adapt his whole way of living to help me and to change things for me, I need to understand that it's going to take time for these new things that he's learning to actually become second nature to him. And because it's going to take him some time, he is likely to make some of the same damn mistakes 3 or 4 more times until he eventually catches on. And the same thing goes for me. So if I make the same mistake again, he doesn't shame me about it. We sit down with clear heads later and we remind each other, hey, remember, we're trying to do this instead of this. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm so sorry, babe. That would have prevented this fight. I'm going to work harder to make sure to do that next time. Vice versa, both of us. Because as a team, we have an understanding with each other and we allow grace for these same mistakes to keep happening, but we make sure that that reminder is there. So guys, in conclusion, just to wrap this whole thing up, relationships take work. Whether or not you have bipolar disorder or your partner has bipolar disorder or there's an anxiety disorder or anything else amongst the mix of things, relationships will always take work. There will always be give and take. There will always be compromises. And you got to figure that out now if you haven't already. Because that's what keeps Monish and I together. And it's what keeps us growing stronger and stronger as a couple with each passing day. And I know this all might sound like a lot, but just start slow. If you and your partner are in a new relationship and you're starting to learn about each other, pick one of these things that I mentioned that you can do that would be easy to start implementing now, that would help both you and your partner so that your relationship can grow stronger and you guys can thrive. Because I am so happy in my thriving relationship that I want you to be able to have that too. Because if I can do this, if I can figure this out, and we can make things work over here for me, then I know you definitely can too. It's time for What a Weirdo! Okay, y'all, so this segment is here as a way for us to normalize weird habits that we all have but don't necessarily talk about. And it's a way to create some wholesome laughter at the end of each episode as we sometimes discuss some pretty difficult topics. So if you've been tuning into the show regularly, you've most likely heard all of my weirdo habits. So now it's time to send in yours. And today we have an anonymous submission from the website form that reads, I always make up a song about what I'm doing, especially when my dogs are involved. They always get a spontaneous song, especially when we're getting ready for a walk. Oh, that is so cute. And I love that. And even though I don't have dogs, I also make up songs about what I do. Yes, I actually talked about that on probably one of the first What a Weirdo segments that came out. I guarantee you it was on one of the first ones because it reminds me of Jess from New Girl, how she's singing about what she's doing. And, you know, Anonymous, I love that you do that too, especially for your dogs. I can just picture that being just so fucking cute. So thank you for sharing. I appreciate that, whoever you are. So what weirdo habits do you have? Send in your anonymous submissions by heading over to whatisheybellsdoing.com/whataweirdo. And if you're not worried about anonymity, then you can go ahead and just go straight to my DMs on Instagram at distressedtojoyful_Bailey's Way. And I am happy to give you a shout out, whether you want me to shout out your name or your Instagram username, whatever it might be. I would love to give you credit for sending in whatever little weird thing you do. See, this one was weird, but it wasn't like way out there. I guarantee all of you do this. I'm actually putting a poll in the podcast Facebook group. 100%. So we can all say whether or not we do this, because I guarantee you it's more than just Anonymous and me and Jess from New Girl. So next episode is titled, I Wish My Parents Would Have. And you're going to hear from me all about the things that I really wish my parents would have taken the time to do while I was growing up that would have been helpful for me. Especially once I received my bipolar 2 diagnosis. So I'm not going to lie, it's going to be a really tough episode because I'm going to be so super vulnerable on this topic. But I really, truly believe that I need to get this out there so that anybody listening right now who has children with bipolar disorder or any other kind of mental health disorder can really learn from my parents' mistakes and figure out how they can go the extra mile for their kids. Because all children need love and support from their parental figures in whatever way possible, especially when mental health disorders are involved. But thank you for tuning into the show. Be sure to follow on Instagram at distress2joyful_Bailey's Way. Or you can go ahead and head on over to the website at whatisheybales.com to check out the show notes from this episode. All those really fun links that I talked about at the beginning are going to be found in those show notes. And if you enjoy this podcast, help spread the word by leaving a rating on Spotify if you are one of my Spotify listeners, or by writing a review on Apple Podcast, or even on the Facebook page. You can leave a review there too, guys, just wherever you feel most comfortable. And who knows, I just might read your review on an upcoming episode. Lastly, don't forget to hit that cute little subscribe button on whichever listening platform you are tuning in on so that you can stay up to date with all of the new episode releases. But until next time, take it easy, stay grateful, and be joyful. Bye!